everybody, and welcome to All Creatures Animal Hospital puppy class. My name is Gabby and I will be doing our PowerPoint today on navigating nutrition for your puppy. It is an important topic, something that we have a lot of tips and information about, and I know it's a lot of questions that you as a new puppy parent have on what's the best food to feed your baby. So today we're going to talk about just different things to look out for, what brands are recommended, and if you have any other questions or concerns, you can always comment on the video or reach out to us and we can definitely go over any other questions you may have. But hopefully this PowerPoint helps you and gives you the information that you need. So again, we're talking about today navigating nutrition for your puppy. So there's lots of different brands of food out there, especially if you go to PetSmart, Petco, you can look online on Chewy. There's 1,000 different diets out there. There are a few brands that we recommend, and the reason that we recommend these is because we know that they have science and proven information that show the actual ingredients, what's in their food, and that we know that these are best for growing puppies. So the top brands of foods that we recommend are Hill's Science Diet, Royal Canin, Purina Pro Plan, Iams, and Eukanuba. I did put some pictures on here. Of course, there's going to be different kinds. So there's the regular puppy small bites, like with this Hill Science Diet. There's a small and toy breed puppy. There's large breed. So there are different varieties, but at least to kind of get the concept of what these brands of foods look like, so that if you do your research at home, you have that as well. And I realized that I spelled Eukanuba wrong, so I apologize for that. Missed that. But I have all these different brands. So these are the top brands that we do recommend to feed for our puppies. If you're feeding a different diet, we do recommend doing a slow transition, which are labeled on these bags, kind of how to do a transition over a week's period of time. So just kind of navigating nutrition. So one of the most important things is, just kind of reading the label. So a pet food label, there's numbers and percentages that can be easily misinterpreted, and different marketing claims that lack, definitions or evidence to support what they're actually having in it. So we highly recommend that you get a food that is labeled correctly, that is actually has the proof that the ingredients that they're promoting are actually in the food. They do not have regulations on pet food like there is for human food. So I could literally make a food tomorrow and say that it has the best ingredients, it has all the right balanced nutrition, and it may not have that. That is just something that is not regulated in the field, unfortunately. So you do have to be really careful and mindful on what you're feeding, what kind of brands, and just kind of do your research. So making sure you're choosing a food for your cat or dog, that it's a big decision. So we are here to help you and kind of guide you, and just kind of give you the little things to look out for, and just to be able to completely understand what's in your food and in the diets that you choose. And the reality is that the best food is the one that meets the unique nutrient and energy needs of your pet's life stages and health status. So of course, as they get older, you may need to switch to a different version of that same brand of food. They have the puppy, they have the regular adult, they have the senior as they get 7 years or older. But there's also prescription diets that go if your pet develops a certain condition, that can help too. So that is something that we recommend, if we do recommend certain diets for specific reasons. And then also, I just made another little note that you should feed your puppy food until your fur baby is at least a year of age, and then transition to an adult food. So you don't want to keep them on puppy food for their whole life, because puppy is specifically made to match the nutrients, and they're fast growing at their younger years or younger months versus when they get a year of age. It's not as much calories. The nutrient balance is different because they're not growing as quickly, so it's to keep a maintenance of the exact nutrients that they need to grow properly and also stay at a safe weight. So again, talking about the labels, so navigating the nutrition, that things you should keep in mind when reading the pet food labels. So one, you want to feed a diet that's right for your pet's life stage. Also look for the AAFCO statement. So we talked about that there's not a whole lot of FDA regulation that you can just put a diet out there and, say this is what it has in it, whether or not that's true. But there are certain regulations that certain pet foods can be submitted through that get this AAFCO statement, that actually tests and makes sure that what this brand of food is saying is in their diet is actually in it. So not all foods have these AAFCO statements, but the brands like we recommended, the Hill Science Diet, the Royal Canin, Ukanuba, there are diets that have these statements that have been tested and gone through the process of proving that what they're putting in their foods is actually 100% accurate. So the statement appears on the food's label if the AAFCO statement has determined that the diet contains all the nutrients in the right balance to meet a pet's nutritional needs specific to the life stages. So, these are on all sorts of puppy, adult, to make sure that they're getting exactly what they need, and it's the proper balance of the nutrients like we talked about before. The statement also says it has been determined by either that the diet has been formulated to meet the nutritional profiles or that the diet has passed feeding trials to prove that it provides adequate nutrition. So that is one of the biggest things, is making sure there's an AAFCO statement on there. It's typically on the sides of the bag. At least I know that's for Hills, and I'm pretty sure for Royal Canin. But you can look into these and see, so making sure if you happen to not choose one of the brands that we've recommended, make sure that the food that you are getting has an AAFCO statement, so at least you know that that diet or that brand has gone through some kind of regulation to prove that what they're really saying is in their food is actually in it, and there's science and data to prove that the diet has passed trials that shows that there's no effects, no kind of lack of nutrients that cause any issues for your baby. So the second one is not to get too caught up in the ingredient list. So pets need nutrition or nutrients, not ingredients. So nutrients are definitely more important than the ingredients. So, you can really get caught up in making sure that, it's just a straight chicken diet, or, there's certain things that sell, that there's no grains. We'll talk about grains and stuff in a little bit further down the line, but just making sure that you have the proper nutrients in the diet. Ingredients listed are in descending order by weight. So there are sometimes chemical sounding minor ingredients that tend to be listed towards the end, but as stated by a board certified specialist in veterinary nutrition, that many of these ingredients are actually essential vitamins and minerals. So just do your research. Just because it sounds like a chemical doesn't mean that it is a bad ingredient in the food. We're making sure that these diets, or they're making sure when they're creating these diets, that they have the proper balance of vitamins and minerals to make sure that your pet is getting everything. Unlike us, where we're having our diets and we have to think about how much chicken, how many vegetables, for our protein and nutrients ourselves. These foods are made all in one to have the exact balance of nutrients, vitamins, minerals, proteins, to make the healthiest life for your baby. So you definitely want to make sure that you're getting the proper nutrients and not just what sounds good in the ingredient list. The third thing is understanding that byproducts aren't necessarily bad. Animals need byproducts. So again, with the labeling of the AFCO, it defines that byproducts as secondary products produced in addition to the principal product. They may include organs, many of which are nutritionally valuable. So a lot of people, or sometimes with different brands, they'll say, your dog is a descendant of a wolf. And, people feel the need to go towards raw diets, but just feeding a plain chicken breast doesn't give you all the nutrients and vitamins and minerals that you need to be able to survive. And that's not what wild animals eat. They're eating a whole rabbit or a whole chicken, which is ingesting the different organs, bones, all of the product, not just the beautiful little chicken breast, to make sure that they're getting all their nutrients to be able to survive. So it talks a little bit further in this paragraph that, a mixture of the lungs and fats that are a byproduct meal that carry a lot of those nutrients that are able to be given to your baby by having those different byproducts. So it's kind of just understanding that a byproduct doesn't mean that it's what's the word I'm looking for? Just a fake substitute product to fill in to help make the food taste better, or just to sell and sound like they're having more ingredients in it that aren't necessary. These are necessary ingredients to make sure that we're getting the proper vitamins and minerals for your baby to grow. So the fourth thing is to not fear preservatives. So it does keep food from going rancid. So there are some chemical preservatives that have been determined to be safe for animals. So it's the same as a lot of our foods do have some preservatives. It doesn't mean that it's bad or it's any reason to not get the food. It's to keep it from being spoiled. If you choose to get a food that doesn't have a preservative, that's fine. You just need to be mindful of the shelf life for it because it's not going to last as long as a food that does have a preservative. We're also not saying to discount chemical preservatives and say that they're all good. That's not what we're saying, but there are ones that are chemically chemical preservatives that are determined to be safe for animals. So what we're giving is not going to be any harm to your baby. It's just to keep the food from not going bad, to be able to give it a longer shelf life. So the fifth thing is to be aware of marketing ploys and gimmicks. So just again, understanding the labels, which is a lot of the information we're talking about. So sometimes there's clever packaging on pet food, just to kind of go towards a lot of the trends that are out there for human diets, such as organic, natural, human grade, premium, holistic, a lot of different, words that they use. So just remember that a food with a fancy marketing claim may not be the best one. So again, like I said, you got to do your research, see if they have the AFCO statement, really read what those ingredients are that are being labeled in that product. A lot of these companies that are true to what they're putting, in their ingredients, like Hills, Royal Canin, Ukanuba, you can call those companies and talk to a veterinarian on their team to be able to ask more questions, see which, maybe brand or which bag of food product in their line would be best for your baby if you have any concerns or you're looking for something specific. But some of these companies, that maybe are not always upfront with what they're putting in, may not always be open to talking with you or having, a customer service representative or a veterinarian, to be able to talk with you to answer your questions. So definitely do your research and see if you're able to talk to somebody in regards to, having questions if you're looking at different kinds of brands of food too. So 6 Know that not all types of protein are the same, so consider the protein source. So, for most healthy pets, a diet that's higher than average in protein isn't always necessarily better. So, you need to, make sure that a high protein diet may not be the best kind of diet. Having a lot of protein can throw off the balance of the amount of protein that they're supposed to have in relation to the different vitamins and minerals that you need in a well balanced diet. Um, you can't always determine the protein content from the ingredient list. So, like I said, a lot of these companies are open to you calling so you can get more information to know exactly what proteins are in there. You can do more research into the percentage of protein. So, there definitely is, some information that you can get into to just kind of better understand how much protein is in the diet. Or if you're looking at a high protein diet, you can, call that company and get a little more information to see what the percentage is and, if they've known of any, in their trials, maybe any kind of side effects from that. But as far as the diets we recommended with the Hills, the Royal Canin, they're all a good percentage of protein in their diets. They're not a high protein. Sometimes for specific circumstances, it is recommended to be on a low protein diet. But unless that's something that you've discussed with your veterinarian in regards to a specific issue that your baby is having, they should not be on a prescription or a low protein diet. It should be just a regular protein content in their diet. 7, which I believe is our last tip. The right amount to feed your pet may be different than the recommendation on the label. So some labeling on pet food may contain instructions on how much to feed, but you should always follow what your veterinarian is recommending. Sometimes, pending on the puppy, everybody grows and eats differently, just as we do as humans and when we're babies. So you can, at this point, you're not really worried about any puppies typically being overweight. So depending on what your baby is doing, you can go by the recommendations on the actual food bag, but you may be feeding a little more. If your puppy seems like they could handle a little more food, you may be feeding a little less, depending on the size of your baby. So you can play around with that food, and we're definitely here to help and guide you if you feel like you're feeding too much or feeding too little. There are different tips that we can give as far as maybe feeding a little bit more, especially for our larger breed babies, and then maybe having to adjust or feeding a little less for our smaller dogs. And then making sure anytime you feed your pet a new food or a new package of a customary food, just pay attention for their reactions, especially if you're switching from one brand of food to the other. It can upset their stomach, so it may cause diarrhea, vomiting. So if you do notice any of that, definitely let your veterinarian know. And also keep the packaging so that if there's any leftover food, you could either return it, switch it for something else. And a lot of these companies, will have you file like a little claim kind of complaint so that they can also keep track if certain breeds of dogs are having issues to the food. But again, like I mentioned before, you want to make sure that your puppies are on a puppy food up until a year of age. Any of our smaller babies should be on the regular puppy or small bites, and our larger breed dogs should be on a large breed puppy food. And the reason for the difference is that large breed puppies get a diet that has less calcium in it because they are growing extremely fast. They do not need that extra calcium supplement. Versus our smaller dogs, they can still have calcium in their diet. So again, that's where you're reading your labels and just kind of understanding everything that's in there and making sure you're getting either the regular puppy or the large breed, depending on the size of your baby. The last thing we're going to talk about, which I mentioned before, is just to be mindful when it comes to grain-free diets and raw food diets. So recently, in the last year or so, grain-free diets have recently been linked to causing dilated cardiomyopathy, or DCM. What that is it's a type of canine heart disease that affects the heart muscle. So there have been studies that have been conducted, and there's things that you can research, but being on a grain-free diet is, until we know more, we definitely recommend, unless there's a specific reason or there is an allergy involved, which it's very rare for there to be a kind of grain allergy. It's more so the protein allergy. But unless directed by your veterinarian, I would highly recommend just staying on a diet that has grains and not grain-free until we know more about the links and kind of get more research information. We want to make sure our babies are healthy and they have the longest life possible. So, making sure that we avoid those grain-free diets is definitely something to just be mindful of. And then also raw food diets. I mentioned that briefly, just kind of, the raw food, making sure that there's enough nutrients, minerals, all of that kind of stuff in your diet. Just doing a raw chicken breast with some rice is not going to be a well-balanced meal for your baby. So there's a lot more to consider. In addition to, there have been studies conducted that found that a lot of raw diets can cause salmonella, listeria, so different foodborne illnesses, and it is something that the FDA has issued a warning to avoid doing any kind of raw food diet, as well as the American Animal Hospital Association and the AVMA. Another worry with raw food diets is the obstruction from any bones. So if you're feeding, chicken on a bone, making sure that they're not digesting the bone in any way, that can cause a lot of issues in their GI tract. Like it said, obstruction, it could, cause damage inside the intestines as well as choking. And also, like we talked about, making sure that they're properly balanced. So definitely sticking with a diet that is made to have all the balanced nutritions, minerals, vitamins, protein is definitely the best way to go. So this is just more, I know there's lots of diets to consider. It's a lot of information to digest, but I just want everybody to have all the knowledge that they can to make the best decision. I personally feed my babies Hill Science Diet, and they've always done great. Royal Canin is another great brand that we highly recommend. The Eukanuba, the Iams, the Purina Pro Plan. Those are all great diets. There are other diets. If you have something different that you've looked into that you really like feeding your baby and you have questions, you can call us, ask questions. But it's just, a lot of information to know when it comes to feeding your cats or puppies, dogs, kittens, making sure that you're just choosing the right food to give them the longest, healthiest life that we can give them. But I hope this video helped. I hope it answered some questions that maybe you had in regards to nutrition. And if you do have any further questions, you can comment on the video, you can message us, or you can call the clinic and we can definitely chat